All right, what's up, guys? This is Greg Ryder. I'm a singer-songwriter based here in Strathmore, Alberta. And on today's episode, we're speaking to a hilarious comedian by the name of Andrew Packer. And he does a little show on TikTok and Instagram called Man News. And it's pretty much just these news, and he's pretty much the trusted news anchor. And he's talking about all the things that you didn't think you needed to hear about. It's hilarious. I've definitely sat in many different places around the house and watched Andrew Packer do his thing on Man News. I'm very fortunate to have him on the show. We got to hear his story about how he started, what he did, and we got to eat some really incredible beef jerky with him and Mark on this episode. So this is probably one of the most entertaining episodes that you will watch here on the Greg Ryder Show. So sit back, grab a water. I'm choking on jerky right now. And then enjoy the Greg Ryder Show. Let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome to the Greg Ryder Show. Today's episode, we have Andrew Packer. And he actually just finished up an Alberta tour with Marc-Anthony, who was on the previous podcast. And they were both coming through towns. We said, why not do a podcast with both? And wanted to get to know Andrew Packer some more. And welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So Andrew has been doing this thing called Man News for the last 2 years, and he's amassed over 1 billion views. So tell me, what is Man News? Is it for men?
It's the most important news stories that the other news networks are not covering.
Because news are so important nowadays.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, you know what? There's so much out there, but I just noticed there was a huge just swath of stories that we care about that were not being covered.
I want to thank you for being a trusted news anchor.
It's a noble journey, but I have to do it. Someone needs to, and I'm just proud to have been elected by the men.
Yeah, you know what? Just to have trust, have that title, the trusted news anchor. It's an honor.
It's an honor. It's a responsibility.
Yeah.
So it is a mixed bag, but it's something I wake up every day knowing that I have purpose.
Yeah. And how do you keep showing up for that?
I mean,
you put the socks on the same way every morning?
Yeah, it's good. I got a good person in my corner, my wife, she's there. She's trusted. Then I have, just a supportive community online that is helping suggest these things, a fleet of men looking for the most important news stories, tagging me every day, submitting them to me. And, through me, our producer, Paul, and Travis, the intern, we all together elect which ones are most important.
Travis is such an intern name.
This guy just needs to get off the weed, that guy.
So where did you get the idea from, and how did it how did things start? Obviously now the content's coming to you.
Yeah.
But how did it first start? Where did you come up with the idea?
There's a short version, and then there's a long version. The short version is that there was this controversy in TikTok, and I thought it'd be funny to start reporting as a news anchor on it. And so I started with that, reporting on the controversy, and then as that started to die down, I started to just continue reporting on things that I thought would be funny to report on. And then that's where we went.
I love it.
Yeah, it just evolved from there.
Yeah. It's so clever when you see someone that just took an idea and just continued to do it no matter what happened. I'm sure you probably didn't get to high views the first couple ones. You're like, should I just retire this? But you kept, or was it something that just hit right away?
It is something that kind of hit right away.
Okay.
The thing is, I was making 5 to 6 TikToks a day and posting them for probably 8 to 10 months.
Okay.
then I kind of fell off for a couple months as touring came back and stuff. And then, you know, we got locked down again for the third time in Toronto. And in that time, I was like, okay. And I started hitting it again. And then one day I made a Man News video. And in my head, I started thinking about content as series of like, how could I, instead of one good idea making one good TikTok, what if like one good idea could make 5 TikToks or more than that, right? And that's a much easier way to like make a lot of good content.
So you're making them as long and then cutting it into short bits in a way?
No, I'll shoot them as short bits, but I just mean like the premise is not just one video. The premise is all the videos in the same way like a sitcom is a pilot episode, and then they take those character dynamics and then create 100 episodes or more. And so I felt like this one could be that, but 3-4 days went by, it was sitting at like 5,000 views, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm wrong. And then on like the 6th day, all of a sudden it hit 350,000. And on that day I was like, guess I'm shooting more tomorrow. And I just started pumping them out from there.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking a bit before the podcast kicked off, and so you're from Toronto.
Yeah,
that's now. How long have you been in the comedy game, and kind of like where'd you start off?
So I mean, I should say I'm from Oshawa because people from Toronto do not want to hear that you are saying you're from Toronto if you're from Oshawa.
I'm sorry.
That's where I grew up though, and then I've lived in Toronto for a long time. But I started comedy in Ottawa actually.
Yep,
which is our nation's capital.
You know, I actually heard today, I don't know, it's actually pronounced Ottawa. What is that?
Is that for real?
Yeah.
Is that what Justin's saying now?
Dude, someone said that the Aboriginals actually pronounce it different. And I was like, it was Carlton. What's his name? Tucker Carlson.
Of all people?
Tucker Carlson was actually talking on a Nelk podcast today, and he was making fun of Canada because he's like, when anytime you make fun of Canada, people are like, oh my God, they're talking about us in the States. So all the clips of Tucker goes viral when he makes fun of Canada.
Yeah.
And he was talking about Ottawa, and he kept saying, Ottawa. And I was like, okay, this guy's a joke, right? This guy's saying it all wrong. And then he's like, but guess what? It's actually pronounced. I heard from like a chief in Ottawa that was saying the actual pronunciation is Ottawa. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but
yeah, but
a fun fact.
Now we're like getting back into like if you visit Barcelona, and you're like Barcelona. You're like, all right, well, what do people actually call it?
It's true. I don't know. I had that thought into my head, and I knew I couldn't shake it.
I mean,
how's the comedy scene in Ottawa?
It's good. It's a nice community. It's a good place to start initially. There's a couple great clubs, some indie shows, but it is still a very small comedy scene. So if you want to actually pursue it and get to do a lot of stage time, you need I don't know. When I started, somebody said like the benchmark for what you should be shooting for is to get to doing at least 2 hours of stage time a week.
Okay.
And that's not feasible as a new comic in most places, let alone Ottawa, where you can maybe get up like 4 to 5 times a week would be great in a scene that size.
Okay.
Whereas in Toronto, you can easily get 10 spots a week, no problem.
Right. But even Mark was saying it's much smaller sets, so it's hard to like build up that stage time in Toronto.
Yeah, at the beginning it's very tough, and the problem with Toronto that an Alberta like Calgary or Edmonton comics don't have, or even the West Coast, is that in Toronto a lot of comics will just stay in the city and they'll perform to the city all the time. I'm performing only to it's a very specific demographic and not representative of most of Canada, because most of Canada is whatever is 45 minutes outside that city.
Right.
So then when you get on the road, and a lot of Alberta comics get on the road fast doing 10 to 20 minute sets, sometimes 30s, same with Vancouver, then you can start to build that like larger idea with a more balanced perspective on who is actually listening to your material.
Gotcha. So you finished up a tour a couple months back in Alberta, and your last show was at Strathmore. So why do you keep coming back to Alberta? What's it about kind of the West that kind of keeps bringing you back?
It's the jerky, baby. No, I love Alberta's my favorite province, hands down. It's just easy. I mean, you just even geographically, you've got the mountains in Banff, and then the flat plains, and then the Badlands and Drumheller. There's just so much going on, and you can see the mountains from almost everywhere, which is kind of fun. And then audiences come out. I mean, you can look at it from like a business standpoint where it's like the highest income per person versus the lowest cost of living per person, which means people are just down to do stuff. So that's cool. And then the people that do come out are genuinely just there to laugh. You know, they're rewarding funny first. And that's great. It's a really fun audience to perform in front of.
Do you feel like you change your material for like more rural, like kind of like Albertans when you come out here?
I wouldn't say change my material, but I write while I'm on the road too.
Okay, cool.
So while I'm writing on the road, I'm writing about the things I'm experiencing and seeing here. So naturally it is stuff that is here. So there is that, but it's just like when I'm in Toronto, I'm writing about the things I'm experiencing and seeing there. And then I have to translate it here and translate what I do here back there. And it just makes you a stronger act to be able to perceive yourself in these different places.
Is there a difference between audiences in like Ontario and Alberta? Like, what do you find?
Small town Alberta and small town Ontario, very similar.
Okay.
City Alberta, city Ontario, very similar, but still obviously many differences. But depends what you're talking about. I'm not very political. I'm not trying to get people into like a division sensation when they're in the crowd. I'm more so just kind of trying to make everyone have a good time. And I think because of that, it's not, the differences aren't as drastic.
You have very conversational. Like I watched a couple of your videos. Like I like it. It's very kind of like what's happening to me in this moment. Like maybe if I'm walking up and I see something, like you said, you even love crowd work. So what's it like? What's crowd work to you? Why do you love that? And how do you improve at that?
Yeah, it's elusive. It's hard to know exactly if I'm improving this thing, but you just trust that if you're doing it a lot and actually care and curious is like the number one thing. Because people, when they do crowd work, oftentimes they'll be like, how do I get a laugh out of my question? And you know, that would be great, but oftentimes if the question's kind of like jarring or shock value, and then also you're not actually wondering about what the answer is going to be. And the truth is like the most comedy comes from truth when people give you that. So if you're genuinely curious about a question, not only will you get better answers, but if you get an answer, the follow-up question will already be there for you because you're curious. And then once you hit that weird thing that you can extrapolate into a joke, it's like then you start to play. And then these things become devices in the world of the show. So it's cool. You can let them go, and then you can bring them back. You can tie them together, and it's a lot of fun to do that for the crowd. And you know, there are like patterns you're kind of playing on, but it's also, you know, who knows what's going to happen. So yeah, it's interesting.
Do you love hecklers, or like, is there like in the beginning maybe of your comedy career where like, because I feel like if someone heckled you from the audience, like you almost have to like put them down. Like you have to come up with something clever. So you're like, man, if someone yells at something or like, I got to like send it home. Like, are you ever like worried about your delivery?
That kind of mentality is like, I get like why you would have that on the outside, but if you react like that, the bad way it can go is it can be your ego talking in that moment, and what you give is not justified amongst the greater collective crowd.
Gotcha.
And they're constantly kind of judging whether you've handled that situation, whether they know it or not. It's just the human. They're all kind of one brain that's judging what's taking place. So it depends on the intention and the vibe of the heckle. You know,
so you don't let them really get into you. You almost let it kind of see if like they'll continue.
Well, it depends. If it comes out and it comes into a place, I'll like take it in. And then in that moment, you kind of instantly judge whether it's something that deserves attention, something that's disrupted the flow of where I'm going, or if I can just move on and just act like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's kind of innocuous. It's not even an intention. They're just having a good time. You let it go. Also you're calculating what percentage of the crowd heard that. Because even though you heard it like right here, but if you're in a 200 person room, you heard it right here, there might be 20 people around here. So now you're stopping the whole show for 10% of the audience. And
that's smart. Because,
then it's like, what's the value of doing that? You know, you have to get that payoff if you're going to have that dead space. So you're making all these flash decisions in the moment, just from experience and instinct is what you have to trust in those moments. So if it's positively intended, then I'll try to play with it and bring it in and stuff. I had a girl last night that kept calling back on one of my jokes she really liked. So what am I going to do to her? Like stomp on her for having a good time? It's like not the right move.
Like a callback meaning...
I get this joke about trains, and I get the whole audience going off of it. So she kept yelling like train stuff. Okay. And I was just like, and it's a silly bit, so I just played with it, kept bringing it into the set.
Like, calm down there. Okay.
But so stuff like that. But then some people will actually try and attack you, and then that you actually can just, the crowd's mostly just mirroring your whatever you're putting out there. So if something crazy comes at you, you can just react and be like, that was crazy. And that's an honest take. And then, you know, it's always fun to get a good line to hit them back with, but only when it's justified.
Yeah. I got to talk about, obviously, like, what's your take on Matt Rife? Because I feel like we all know his story about, like, you know, he was at the Just for Laughs festival. He was performing for free and they didn't even want him to perform.
Never heard of that before.
And he posted this video and he woke up the next morning with just like crazy amount of streams. And it was like his crowd work. So like, in a sense of crowd work, like, is he as chalked up as like he is, or is he just kind of like his stuff hit? Or do you feel like he is really good at crowd work?
I'm not an expert on his stuff. I've seen a number of clips, and I've seen some clips where I'm like, phenomenal choices, decision making, very charming in the way that he handles things that take place. And so and then with that, you know, using the dead space and finding a lot of funny stuff and not taking himself too seriously. I think it is undeniable that he is a fantastic comedian and also a great at crowd work for sure. I believe that. And I think also, like, you know, that story is romanticized to be condensed, you know? Like, sure, one video popped off, that's great, but like every comic has had one video do over 1 million views. Like, so many, right? But the fact that he just kept putting out really quality clip after quality clip to keep an engaged crowd. And then you look at his clips and it's like multi angles on random sets with crisp quality. Like every one of his clips looks like it's a comedy special that got shot. So, you know, business mind to also hire the proper videographers and find those guys. You know, we're talking about a very intelligent individual who works very hard while being very talented. So I have much respect for him.
And you know what? Like, I think I was talking about someone with that. Like, we were saying that, like, there's some planning that went into that because, like, you can get lucky, but it's like you said, it's how you follow it up and can you keep it up? Because, you have to have that sharpness and just fighting through it and posting content. But we're not here talking about Matt Rife. I just wanted to kind of talk about a little bit about him. But you've done some awesome things. Like you were telling me about the Seattle Comedy Music Festival. Tell me a bit about that. And you said it was a very interesting kind of competition.
Yeah, the Seattle comedy competition is it's really fun. It's been running for 42 years. It has had, like, Mitch Hedberg was in it. Rory Scovel competed, two of my favorite comedians. So it was something that kind of just was in play that I'm like, oh, this is my turn to do this kind of rite of passage situation. Hundreds of comedians apply. They pick 32 comedians to perform. There's a preliminary weeks, so 16 comedians in each week get to try to get into the semis, and then the semi week is 10 comics, so you go from 32 to 10, and then the finals week is just 5. And I did that in 2019 and got up to the finalist week, which was great. I placed 5th, so it was a very humbling finals week, but very much like you got to play in awesome venues, the biggest venues I've ever performed in. Some of them were 2,500 people, and that's just like all these like echelons of people you get to see, and you change your pacing, and great experience overall. Yeah,
that's so awesome. And you were saying that like musicians, we love competitions.
I don't think any artist does. Every artist
what does a comedian think about competitions?
The general consensus amongst stand-ups is that all competitions are bullshit and whatever. Yeah. But it's stage time and it draws people. Right. It sells people into a seat, into a venue. It forces you to hone. And you only have 5 to 7 minutes and your 5 minutes is up against 16 other comics on the same show. Mm-hmm. How do you stand out?
Yeah.
And how do you use those minutes as efficiently as possible? So all that fat, you might have a joke that's 5 minutes that you think is great, but maybe just that 1 minute of a tight setup and punch is super strong. Mm-hmm. And then couple that with the other highlights from the act. Yeah. And then how do you build that into just a phenomenal, memorable 5 minutes? I mean, that's something that you work on, and then that's a skill that goes directly into late night, directly into writing your next material. It's all valuable, but it's all about stage time, and the actual prize of winning is not the value you get out of it.
Gotcha. I feel like Last Comic Standing is kind of like a singer's American Idol, Canadian Idol, because it's like you everyone's like, oh man, like if I hear one more person tell me I should be on American Idol, or like does people say you should be on Last Comic Standing or any of those big shows? All right, I just want to pause this conversation quickly just to talk about one of our dear sponsors, Rocket Grid Marketing. They are an incredible Alberta-based digital marketing company, and they focus on growing brands. They focus on hitting business goal needs and whatever your business may need to take you to the next level. So if you want to check out more about what they do, head to rocketgrid.ca and see what they do.
Do you have ambitious business goals but not sure where to get started? We've got you covered. Rocket Grid Marketing, your integrated marketing experts.
I mean, I think music, you guys have just such a larger industry and such a larger knowledge base of that. I mean, American Idol versus Last Comic Standing is not even comparable in ratings. Probably. I don't imagine.
Sign some deal with some production company after that kind of like controls, I
don't know. I don't actually know, because Last Comic Standing, I think, was not running as a show when I started doing comedy. I was a fan of it when I was watching it, but it's not really been so much a thing. And I'm not really sure what the deals you get out of it. I do know a couple comics that were in Last Comic Standing that use it as a credit still and tour on it. I think like Jeff Dye is coming to Calgary like next week or something, and I know he was from that.
Like, who do you emulate in the sense of like, who do you look up to in the comedy space, and like what makes you gravitate towards a certain style?
I have a ton of inspirations, and that I have for all different reasons and stuff. I mean, one of my favorites is Norm Macdonald. I mean, a Canadian, but also just the charm in his eye every time he's taking you on just a ride. Like, some of my favorite bits are from him. And then he every comic complained about doing Zoom shows through the pandemic. Yeah. And when Norm Macdonald did his final special, he knew he was going to pass away from being so sick and everything. He did it to a Zoom, like just his computer, and it blew me away at how masterful it was. And it was such a nice thing to have as a Norm Macdonald fan, to get to watch that. Yeah. And it just made me feel like everyone who complained that Zoom shows were impossible and just bullshit and not even good, like Norm Macdonald was like, he just did a masterclass on how good it could be. Yeah. And, still would have been great to see him in the right setting, but it's so fun to watch.
Now that he's not here right now, but like, what are your thoughts on Marc-Anthony? Like, since he's not in the room?
Yeah. Just passionate. What a passionate man. I wonder, between his newborn child and a pound of jerky, which you would choose if one was about to fall off a cliff.
I love it. Yeah. Who other than you, other comedians and stuff like that? Like, I don't think I can pay attention right now with Mark ruffling bags of jerky. Yes. Are you as big a jerky fan
he's
Mark?
Shirtless right now, and he's just rubbing the jerky on his tits. It's wild.
You spent another $200.
Oh my god!
Such a good deal, bro. And she threw in all this shit. I met her whole family.
Okay, I feel like you should just come and sit down here for 2 minutes and let's eat some jerky. Okay, Andrew.
First of all, I feel like a fat bastard. Like, I saw the clips of me sitting there. I'm like, I look like a fucking sloth. Why didn't you tell me to straighten up? Okay, so this is their famous beer sausage.
Oh, let's get it in there.
You know what? Here, just get on the mic. Just get these two going. Actually, you know what? This would be funny. Mark, come sit down and do a little review.
Dear God. That is phenomenal.
You got it.
Oh, this is turning into man news real quick.
Bro.
You guys can have the show for like a couple minutes.
Bro, this is unbelievable.
The texture?
Her dad shows up, and he goes, well, what other jerky have you had? I'm like, Longview. Wow. He's like, we're way better than Longview. And I was like, you think so? He goes, try this one. And I was like, I think you're better than Longview.
Oh my goodness.
Which is such a wild thing to say on an open forum.
Yeah. I mean, it's a gross claim when all of Alberta is like Longview, but no.
Well, no one knows about this spot.
No, I'm feeding it to you.
Hold on. I mean, this beer sausage. It's
This is the best like
pepperette I've ever heard.
pepperette I've ever had. Yeah.
What, I've got like 6. She's like, I'll give you one. I'm like, I'm gonna buy 5. Okay, there's no you're giving me one. How many do you have? This is $2. This is $2.
$2?
$2.50. I'm like, you are an idiot.
That
You
could
should be selling this
$10.
for.
So ask him a question about how was the Alberta tour? Talk a little bit about that. What's your funny story from Alberta?
I'm struggling with this mic. I don't know
So
what's
many.
going on here.
You have to bend that piece up. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, give me more jerky.
God.
What's going on here?
This is fucking incredible.
That's ridiculous.
Wow.
The Longhorn Steakhouse. You know what's really pissing me off? They said Big Sky Barbecue. There's all these barbecue spots that we didn't go to. We've only been thinking steakhouse, and I didn't think about barbecue. And I'm actually furious that out of all times coming to Alberta, I never thought of that.
Dude, there were days on this tour where we only ate beef and nothing else. And you're furious because we didn't get enough barbecue.
Well, barbecue's a different type. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
It's a different genre.
Are you kidding me? Buddy.
It's like you can play guitar.
I've had more salt this week, I think, than the past like 3 months.
I'm getting this feeling that you're complaining.
I'm loving it, but also for you to say that we haven't consumed enough meat is kind of insane.
I wish I had meat in the other varieties. You know what I mean? It's like I listened to someone play guitar.
I agree. I think variety is more important in this tour.
There was one 5-hour stretch where we only ate jerky, and we started. You get the jerky farts.
Oh my goodness!
And then you had a jerk fart off.
Our fart off was like, in Dragon Ball Z when they're both shooting their power beam at each other, and we were that was the inside of our car.
Battle of the Kamehamehas.
Yeah.
What was your favorite show in Alberta?
Was it last night, the early one?
For me, set wise, yeah, but
Yeah.
I think Brooks was my overall favorite one because I was having fun with them and really stretching and doing. And working on stuff, so that was fun.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I had a lot of fun at Calgary Yucky Yucks last night. Late show, good crowd. They were fucking around. A couple super fans in the audience.
That was my least favorite one. I ate it with a spoon.
I'm finishing this.
No, man. Dude, you owe me $50.
Right.
Dude, it was so funny. I was counting out how much it was costing me. I pulled out $100, and she was like, just half that. And I was like, yeah, but it's not. She's like, just come back. I was like, I'm going to have sex with all of you. I love all of you people. How good is this, though?
So good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We're going to get Greg back in here.
That's
Yeah.
You just gave B Ranch a big shout out.
Man, there should be A Ranch.
How much-
It is the best.
There it is. There it is.
There's nothing B about this.
Okay, man, we have a lot of jerky here.
That's all you guys get. Get the fuck out of here. I gotta take this home.
Oh my god, that's the best I've ever had.
It's amazing, eh?
Oh my goodness.
Little pepperette action.
Oh my goodness.
Did you try some? You want to open another one?
Dear God.
You should be we should get B Ranch to sponsor you.
She was like, we've never shipped to Toronto.
Yeah, get this Jackling stuff out of here.
Honestly. Yes, please.
Oh my God.
She's like, it's a little fattier, thicker grind. I'm like, she's like, is that okay? I'm like, literally the 3 best things you could have said. Fattier, thicker grind, and marinated in beer. Oh, yeah. It was bad.
I love it. Sure.
It is unstoppable.
This is great.
I could eat like 40.
No, finish it.
I'm good. Well, Andrew, I don't know how do we kick off from here? Do you have a really funny, like, I love hearing the funny stories, but like we were talking about, like, even Mark last night, like I said my biggest fear is, like, if I ever did comedy, like hearing crickets, I don't know what I'd be able to do with myself. Like, that is the scariest thing to me. I want to hear about, like, what was one of your failures? What is a time that you were just like, I can't wait for this show to be over?
You want me to relive my trauma? I mean, that's the thing with being a stand-up. I think a huge skill involved with doing stand-up comedy is masking where you thought the laugh would be and just continuing forward. Because the audience never knows until you tell them, unless there's like a massive gap between punchlines. But when you're trying new jokes, sometimes you'll toss out a line, but it doesn't get it, and you just keep flowing past it.
Yeah.
You're punching past the target as opposed to hitting the target. And that's a huge mistake that like new comics will do, is like get to the punchline and be like,
And
fuck.
they're waiting for it, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have a laugh track to help you out with, like, all these shows. It's like someone has to laugh, and then hopefully it just adds on to that.
And it's so funny when people post on clips being like, added a laugh there for sure. That's like, it's the funniest comment when people think that you did that. You're like, do you know how much extra effort this would be to like add laughs here and also, you don't think people would figure it out? I'm not running Big Bang Theory over here. This is a stand-up comedy clip. But I've had moments on stage that have not gone well. One of my worst bombs ever was in excuse me, gets me every time.
Jerky burp.
Wetaskiwin in Alberta. I did this massive bar there that could fit 300, and there was maybe 20 people in there, and I got heckled by this 80-year-old lady named Faye for 45 minutes. She would just yell at me like, he kind of looks like a chicken, and just literally. Yeah. And then, like, there'd be a dead silence. She'd be like, see the way he's moving his neck? He looks like a chicken. And she was like a bottle of wine deep already. And I was like, who is this lady? And they're like, that's Faye. She makes the best pierogies in Alberta. And the rest of the people were like, yeah, she makes great pierogies. And that was a rough 45 minutes. And then that's crazy, because like you're on the road and you're in these situations, you bomb, it's horrible, you feel horrible about yourself and how you are as a comedian, but you did the thing. And then they all bought merch, and I was like, what is going on? I don't know, because they've never been to a show, these particular people, so they just go, that's the show, and we loved it. And you're like, this is messed up, man.
It's always the shows that you're just like, you didn't think anything landed, and yeah, they buy merch and stuff. And then the shows you think you killed, you're just like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, perception's a bitch sometimes.
Yeah. What like you said, I like the advice that you kind of gave to like newer comics. Like, what is it about, if someone just said, was watching this video and they're like, man, I think I just want to like just get into it. Like, what does it come down to? I think we know the answer. It's consistency and stuff, but like, what's some personal advice you have for someone getting into it?
Just as much stage time as possible.
Yep.
And persistent effort. Care about what you're doing and saying up there. Be curious. I think anything more specific than that, then I get, you could direct somebody away from their skills and pathways that might create their unique choices that creates what they do on stage.
Mm-hmm.
stand-ups are very individualistic, and it's very, because you're the only person up there, so we all work in a very individualistic way. There's few comics that you can have that relationship with where you collaborate and stuff. Just it's the nature of the culture in every comedy scene I've been to. So yeah, it's very important to find your own thing of what you're doing up there, or your own, I guess, remix to all of your inspirations and mix with what you like to do, and figure it out from there. But just like writing is super important, and performing a lot is super important. So
take me back to your first time ever being on stage. Like, did you over prepare? Like, how many jokes do you think like you're writing? Like, if you were to give me advice, because I've always wanted to do like an open mic stand-up comedy, like just go up there like and do it. But it's just like, what would the advice for how many jokes should I write? Should I write more material? Like, what would you say to that?
Just make sure it's fun. Just have fun. That's number one thing. But fun in a way that's like genuine, not in a way that makes you uncomfortable or like, like some people, it's very common for people to misjudge something that makes them uncomfortable as funny. Yeah, it's like a very common impulse that even like I get to this day, and new comics, it's very prevalent. Like it makes you uncomfortable, so you think it's funny, and it's funny. Laughing is like a defense mechanism in a lot of places. So yeah, it can be kind of elusive, but if you're genuinely having fun up there, the crowd will mirror that. If you're uncomfortable, unsure of yourself, scared, not having a good time, the crowd will mirror that.
Interesting.
So just have fun.
I did a stand-up class. You ever performed in Hamilton at I think it's Levity?
Yep. Yeah, I've headlined that club.
Yeah. So I did a stand-up class there with one of those guys, and like he was taking me through a couple weeks, and I was so nervous, and we're writing down jokes, and he's teaching us how to write jokes. And then it started getting to the end, I actually quit. I didn't do it because the guy said to me, I go up on stage and I give like a fake kind of like, he said, go up and practice your routine. I went up there, and he comes off, he's like, you got great delivery, but you know what? I just don't think you're a punch liner. I don't think that's really your form of comedy. I think like you're a musician, like you should maybe bring your guitar up next time and maybe do songs or whatever. But like, is that true? Is there people that like have storytelling comedy? There's people that are really good at punchlines. Like, is there actually like people that are different skills at that stuff?
I think you gotta like chalk up the advice to who it's coming from a little bit. And if someone's teaching a comedy course in Hamilton, let's start there. I did.
They should be paying you.
Yeah, I did. I read I've been reading this book. It's called The Creative Act with Rick Rubin. Okay. And I saw like a quote in it that said, like defining your art limits your possibilities. And it's it is important to hone and try and do something that is going to be effective, but when you're back out, like you're constantly zooming in, zooming out, zooming in and zooming out on what you're creating and what you're making. And, if you don't pull away all the limitations you've created for yourself, how do you find those unique things that are going to inform your style and what you do? And so I would say to that advice that if you're weeks into comedy, you're essentially doing an impression of what you think a comedian is probably. And I think my assumption of you, because you're already a performance, like you have stage experience and all that, I would assume your stage presence is probably a lot more formed than somebody that wouldn't have ever had that experience, which is great. But you would only find out what your natural abilities are from the crowd is king. The crowd tells you what is funny. And to be like you're a one-liner, you're a punch-liner, it's just so stupid. It's like these are great things to have in your wheelhouse. To me, it's a very much like a old school mentality on stand-up, which is natural because it's a very new art, so it's developing. But I always related it to fighting. I go, boxing was very, very popular. It was the number one sport. Everyone loved boxing. It's still very much a thing, but now what's king is MMA. MMA takes in all the skill sets and says, what can you do to this other person. And for comedy, it's all the skill sets. What can you do with this crowd? So if you have one-liner abilities in your back pocket, they're so valuable. If you're able to do crowd work, that's a great thing to have in your arsenal. If you've got great joke writing, you've got great performance, the combination of all those things will inform your style and what you do on stage, and make you just the strongest comedian that you can be.
Did you take lessons, or is you're more like just do it and kind of fail and stumble along, like kind of fail forward? How did you kind of start?
It's a blend. I didn't ever take stand-up lessons. I just did just willed myself into open mics, and then tried to just get onto better shows and build that 5 minutes. And I was like, I remember thinking like, oh, if I could just do well for 5 minutes consistently, that would just be great. Like, you know, I remember, and then it moves to 10, and then it moves to like 15, and then it keeps building from there. Can I have a consistently strong, jam-packed 45 minutes? Can I make a comedy special? Like, it just keeps moving. But with, while 3 years into stand-up, I was like, well, yeah, everyone shits on improv because we're stand-ups, but that's stupid. I mean, seems like it could be valuable if there's all these people doing it. So I took improv classes for a number of years, and, you know, dove into that and found benefits in learning and new ways of thinking about what I'm doing on stage, which was super valuable. And I've read so many books that are autobiographies from different comedians like Steve Martin, Sebastian Maniscalco, Kevin Hart, and just over the years of like just having different things around you that are continuing informing what you're trying to build and do, as well as living experience. That's where I'm at personally. But that's been my very much like I don't know. I used to consider that like my master's was just my master's in comedy. Like you know, I didn't. I just applied how school was built for me, and like how we got forced to learn this like stuff that I didn't want to really know, and just how do I apply that to this elusive thing that I'm trying to figure out.
I'm sure that like all those things, like they add to the overall kind of your show, right? Because like obviously the improv that you took has been a big part of Man News, and coming up with, I'm guaranteed that stuff's not scripted.
Yeah, no.
So you're just kind of going off the top of your dome.
Teleprompter.
It's like, okay, what am I gonna say? But yeah, no, but you really dove into like your pandemic. You dove into the content and the TikTok world and stuff like that. Like you were telling me that you're posting all content on Instagram, like reels and stuff like that. Like how important is that as a comedian, as just anyone in arts nowadays?
It's hard to deny at this point. I mean, if you're in comedy, your Instagram is basically a portfolio. People will check, and YouTube is another one like that people will go and they look at, and so it just is. It's super important. There are some comics who are able to finesse their way out of it, and that's great, but it just seems like a prerequisite or part of the job description these days is like to have some type of presence on there.
How like far out are you planning content?
I mean, I'm usually within like 2 weeks.
So you're doing like videos for 2 weeks, and then you post, and then you kind of do a batch day?
No, like, I mean, I post every day, and I make, when I'm home, I'll shoot content like 3 to 4 times a week. And then sometimes less when I'm on the road, just because it's not as easy. But yeah, I try to make content like I'm just always trying to make as much content as possible. And then I post everywhere at least once, and sometimes more.
You said you just finished up some specials. Where can people find those specials?
Yeah, so my debut comedy special is called On Guard. It's on my YouTube channel that you can find at And Packer, and it's right there, the first video, as well as it just got picked up by a record label in Nashville, actually, called 800 Pound Gorilla. Okay. They also actually produced and put out Matt Rife's special and Kyle Kinane, and so that was a nice like little extra push for the special. So it's living on their channel as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's an honor, right? To be a part and starting to get kind of notified, and it's getting that kind of, it's nice to get that kind of that little bump up there. So where do you feel like obviously comedy is your thing and stuff, but you have like a dream show? Do you have like who are you, anyone you chasing? Is there any venue you're chasing? Is there, what are you going after?
I mean, I'm working on next year's going to be really focused on America and going to all these different markets where I know I have like a following because it's a huge chunk in the States, which is really cool. So it'll be exciting to do clubs like that. Of course, every comic, there's like a stance of approval that you want to be passed at the cellar. You want to be in at the Comedy Store in LA and do these kind of iconic rooms. So definitely want to do that. And then also just, I love the American club circuits. I mean, every time I walk into an American club, it's just set up in such an intelligent way. Of course, there are some that are not, but so many of them are just perfectly set up for comedy. And I just can't wait to do those. Right now, just focus on like the 200 to 300 person rooms and figuring out how I can pack those out for a weekend throughout the States.
This is more of a business question, but like performing down in the States, like I had a P2 permit. Like, how are you getting, or is there a thing that you're doing to be able to get paid down there, or like how are you doing that?
It's I'm about 5 months into the process of working with an immigration lawyer and building out my case for the O1 visa.
The O1,
we're going to be submitting it in probably the next 2 weeks.
Nice.
And then hopefully I get back. She's pretty confident because of my social platforms and what I've done up until now, but it's still a big question. It's very costly, very expensive. But in the grand scheme of things, it's just the needed next step.
Yep, absolutely, man. Well, listen, I know you got a show to get to in a bit, so I want to thank you for coming on the show, talking everything about man news.
The jerky, come on.
I know that was definitely probably the most entertaining episode with Jerky, but yeah, I'm happy to come back. You're back here in Alberta. And Andrew Packer, where can people find you? You said your YouTube, but some other places.
At @Packer everywhere: Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Reddit, TikTok. Let's fucking go, Snapchat.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him perform for the first time, and I got to see him perform, so I'm excited to kind of see you do it again, man.
Hell yeah, sweet.
All right, have a good one.
Thanks.